And I am Dr. Luz Maria. And today with us we have an amazing individual, Sherita, a holistic transformational coach. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you. I am Sherita Lacy, and I facilitate a process of holistic transformation for emotional wellness.
Okay, now when you share this with us, that it's such a big name. So, in order to help the audience here understand it, break that down just a little bit for us.
Okay, so a process of holistic transformation focuses on primarily four domains of health. I focus on your nutritional health, I focus on your physical health, I focus on your spiritual health, and I focus on your sexual health. And these things to me make up your mental and emotional health.
I love what you're saying. So we're talking about holistic, everything that makes me as a human being, as a woman. So part of when you talk about transformational, we're talking about looking at all of these aspects to create a new individual.
Well, to really strip away what isn't you that you placed on yourself by the stories that got made up by the events that happened in your life. And so it's really shedding all of that to get to your authentic self.
Okay, so can we start with what led to this work?
Oh my gosh. So my own life, I mean, I'm pretty open about talking about like the history of how I came up with the thing. The womb process is the story of my healing journey and what it took for me to be a mom, rearing children, living in public housing because I did not listen to my parents and I was not focused when I got into college, and I immediately started a family and going through that struggle of rearing children and then figuring out, okay, what was going on when I could not help it when I was in a bad mood and I might yell or scream or curse, and I didn't want to be that way. There was something about the way that I was being that was just left me so dissatisfied and brokenhearted about the relationships in my life, especially the ones with my children. And so that healing journey started in my community. I worked with my elders and people in my community, and that kind of mentorship put me in an environment that exposed me to personal and professional development that we call transformation.
So you utilize the community because they say it takes a village to raise a child. And how many children did you have?
I have 4 children now. I had 3 children, especially at that time, and that's absolutely right. I got very good at learning how to utilize the resources in my community. And because I was using the resources in my community, I was always able to get like the jobs that I wanted the experience in. I loved going to college, but I liked the lecture and the classroom aspect of it. I hated homework. And so I wasn't going to be a very good student if you don't do the homework. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I loved being in the game, and I loved business. And once I was being mentored and trained, I found out very quickly that what I really was a social entrepreneur. And what I was great at was developing social enterprise concepts. And that particular job in the world of nonprofit put me right in alignment with community resources, community economic development specifically, and I just bridged the two.
Help me break down how you got there. So I hear that there was something that was going on in your life. You didn't listen to your parents. You ended up, in the neighborhood with your children, and you weren't being you. How did that even get started to get you out of that, to move you into the direction? Like, what were the steps?
Oh my gosh. So it was really, to me, it was just listening to what was available. I just was a person who would just get in the game. I would lean in to what was available to me. I was very resourceful. And I love taking advantage of opportunity. Like, I just knew by the time I did my first personal professional development training that it was what was like missing, not only in my life, I knew that it would make a difference for others. But what got me there was desperation.
Okay,
so you sought out a transformational coach.
I didn't even know what it was.
Okay.
So it was so.
But how did you?
So what had happened was, oh my goodness, it started with yoga. One of my very dear friends was a yoga teacher, and she got trained by Nikki Myers, who started City Yoga in Indianapolis. Long story short, she was like, you got to go do it. I didn't really know much about yoga. I used to start helping her teach classes, and then I did my first yoga teacher training and fell in love with the philosophy. Once I fell in love with the philosophy behind yoga, and really it was a vehicle for transformation within itself.
Okay.
And then that's when I started understanding that this has more to do with just what I think. This has something to do with what is left inside that was needed to be purged, just like the emotions live in the tissues of the body. And so yoga started getting me in the world of, well, what's happening in my body? And I did emotional yoga. So then I started to understand the emotions as the bridge between the mind and the body. And then I started I got a scholarship actually for part of the anatomy part of the yoga teacher training. And the company that provided that scholarship was called Beyond Your Best. And so Nikki, long story short, got me signed up into that company. I walked in that door and I never looked back. I did all 4 levels of Beyond Your Best with an amazing coach named Jim Zarvo. So I kind of got there just by being spirit-led. It was just the willingness. And there was a point that when I was rearing my children, I knew everybody had the same 24 hours. And I think that this is when Bill Gates was kind of like early on with Gateway and Microsoft, right? Okay. And I remember when it came out that he was making $1 million a minute. And I just remember going, $1 million a minute? And I was like, he has the same 24 hours a day that I do.
That's right.
Everybody has the same 24 hours a day. And it was just from that moment, it was just like, I want more. I want more. I want something different. I want something. And I knew that I was in search of something because I knew this didn't have to be my circumstances. I mean, my mother is amazing. My family is amazing. I was not born into poverty. You know, it was just literally from not like listening to my parents.
Right.
And so that's because I had not suffered like that. I mean, I had traumatic things that I had to endure as a child and growing up, but I had not really suffered. I didn't know that I was poor. You know, I didn't have the experience. I was never reared in a poverty mindset. So it was really in me. And then my mother poured into me. So I knew I was capable. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You know?
So as you're sharing all of this, you know, and I know we've got listeners out there and I just think about some of those listeners that are still in the projects.
Yes.
That want to be able, that know that you can't jump from one here to another place.
Right.
Generally, there's these steps that you go through, and there's thoughts and emotions. So I got is you connected with your community and you start seeking out. What made you even start to look at that? Is there anything specific? I don't want to be poor.
I didn't want my kids to inherit the same level of struggle. I did not want my children to go through the same experience I had. It wasn't going to just be enough to like give them a great education, but the power of transformation is about getting to the core of who you are so that you are left with the power of choice. And then I was able to live in public housing and still send my kids to $15,000 a year schools. I was able to live in public housing and still create possibility for my life. So, the steps to getting there was just, it was suffering. I didn't want to suffer, and I knew I didn't have to because I was seeing what was possible for others. I knew that was possible for me. So I never looked at somebody else's life and said, that's not possible for me because I'm black, or that's not possible for me because we live in public housing, or that's not possible because, we're poor. It was never like that for me.
So you're saying it began in your mind, but what was the first physical step that you took?
The first one,
I think you're saying. I think you said you went to yoga because of your friend, and then what happened after that?
So what had happened was that when they paid for the scholarship, I asked Nikki, "Who do I make this letter out to?" So I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened.
Okay.
So funny. I'm glad y'all asked me that. So this is what happened. I wrote the letter to thank them.
Okay.
And I was working at this nonprofit. So remember, I'm being mentored at this time.
Okay.
Okay. I'm being mentored in this amazing nonprofit at this time.
Okay.
So I'm getting like the game in the nonprofit. I'm building relationships with other referral agencies in the nonprofit world, the community development corporations. So so I'm learning all of these things about community resources and how this works. Okay. And at the same time, when I'm going to get this yoga teacher training certification, this woman comes into the nonprofit and she gives this other woman named Paulette Fair a brochure for the company Beyond Your Best. Around this time, I'm writing the letter. You used the word serendipitous earlier.
Yes.
I heard you say that. Okay, you talk about serendipity. These synchronizations were beautiful. So at the same time, I'm writing the letter, and she says, send the letter to a company called Beyond Your Best. And I was like, where did I hear that name before?
Okay.
And then a friend of mine I hadn't seen in a while, I see him out random, and he says, so he comes by the house, we reconnect, he brings a pizza to the kids or whatever, and he's like, oh, by the way, have you heard of this company called Beyond Your Best? And I was like,
there it is.
Oh
it shows
my gosh,
again.
there it is. So I go back to my yoga teacher, and I was like, what is Beyond Your Best? What is this place I sent this letter to? She goes, It is transformation at a cellular level.
Okay, so let me see, because it really is for the viewers right here. So what I'm hearing you say, there's a point where your mind is on a lookout. It's just looking out. It's like you got these glasses on, special glasses on, where the brain is says, I want to discover, I want to look at, I want to look at, I want to look at, and there's resources, and you use them. Another resource, you use them, another resource. So you're in this look at resource, and you're just a sponge. You're just taking and learning for whatever is happening. And then as you create this momentum and trying to change this mindset, you start noticing the serendipities, all these voices. All of a sudden you pay attention to them and finally guide you to start this particular mission.
Because I didn't have to know what it was. I just knew that if it was lining up, that I was supposed to be there.
See, that is
and that's exactly what I told
beautiful, right? What you just said. You didn't know what it was like. You didn't know what it was. And you didn't have to know. Because sometimes we are so persistent. I gotta know. I want to know the direction. And therefore, we don't know the direction and we stop.
That's right.
And you were free flowing.
That's right. Because I was clear that it wasn't going to happen in what I thought I knew. It was going to happen in the discovery. That's where the magic is happening.
In the discovery of it.
Yes. And so she was like, okay, well, I'll see about it. I was like, no. I'm supposed to be there. Whatever that is, I'm supposed to be there.
Wow.
And so she got me a half a scholarship, and I had a friend. It was $500 for this one class, which was a lot at that time. And I went to that first personal professional development training called Transformation. And by that Sunday, it's 3 days and an evening for most of them. And by that Sunday, it shot me right in the heart. And it just busted it up. And I realized in that moment, I was the person who was creating it. I was creating the circumstances. All of this was happening as a function of what I was creating through my listening, through my speaking, and the way I was being.
Okay, so I have a question. So you talk about your process. Everybody has a different process. Do you find that it's challenging to get other people to latch on to what you're trying to do when they come to you? If they come to you, or, are they willing to do what you're offering?
It always makes sense for people. Okay. It always makes sense for people because people understand very quickly they don't feel good and they just want to feel good.
Okay.
And when you are at a point, especially if your circumstances are dire, you don't feel good nutritionally, you don't feel good emotionally, and you don't know why. And you want to get to the core of what is going on. And we're so programmed to think something is wrong. We don't make space for those feelings because we call them negative.
Right.
And then we don't realize what that does and what that does to the mind.
It's a cue to tell you that something is wrong that you need to address. It's just giving you information.
It's a space that is for you to heal.
Okay.
So those breakdowns really become opportunities for you to look inside, go within, and say, this is what is a program. Okay. And now I get to disrupt this program, and now I get to come from authenticity. Yeah. And so it's like something caused that program. There's something that happened in your life, and then you created some story about that occurrence. You assigned a meaning to it, and now you're living inside of that story. And then every time you get triggered, it goes back to whatever that traumatizing incident was that had you create that story in the first place.
Well, I'm sure that, some of your viewers might want to know, because it is a business, and, do you seek out clientele, or is it by referral? Do they usually hear about you by word of mouth?
Most of the time, people they hear it by word of mouth, they get referred.
Okay.
So because I like to focus my work so heavy in community economic development, then I'm sorry.
So
don't be like, you can edit. Like, you can edit.
We're having some bloopers over here.
Right?
As your listeners, we're having
be plain. I can't understand all that over there. What you say?
We're having our director over there telling us that we misplaced ourselves.
And I'm having a hot flash. So sister just got jacked up. Y'all not supposed to let me fan. Sure. Oh, God. I am glistening right now.
Okay.
You're having a whole internal summer. It's okay. So you're saying that your business is not just dealing with an individual, but it also deals with community.
Yes, because I started out in the world of nonprofit and quickly developed myself as a social entrepreneur and was excellent at developing social enterprise concepts.
Okay.
And so because of that, my passion was to do community work. I knew that this is what was missing for people who did not have access. You know, it really didn't. I mean, of course, I wrote it for women in my situation, in my circumstances, because I knew that it would resonate. If you're living in public housing or you feel like, you know, there's that diamond in the rough, she just needs that opportunity to have access to those resources. And a lot of times, if you're not a resourceful person or you don't know where to look, I mean, I was going to INRC, Indianapolis Neighborhood Resource Center, on my own. I went to the first neighborhood self-employment initiative that there was, started by Charlie Sims. That is now Business Owners Initiative. And so I sought out those things because of what I wanted for my family. The next person may or may not know how to do that. And the healing journey was paramount, because it isn't just like I'm doing all these things to go make this money. If you don't understand the way that trauma and those stories are running you and those beliefs are what's in the background, you'll lose the money.
Yeah.
Or you're depending on your relationship
Yes.
with money. We just did a talk on my IG Live the other day with this woman here that works. And she works to help women with
So
that
one of
relationship.
those beliefs that you shared earlier that was running you was the mentality of poverty.
Yeah, the scarcity mindset.
The scarcity. Was there other
Tons.
beliefs?
Tons. And I still do this work. I still have a coach. I work with a coach now out of LA, and I'm still dealing with that healing aspect. And those ones are like the really super deep buried ones. The ones that are underneath, I'm not worthy, I don't matter, I'm not lovable. You know, those are like the
Yes.
main ones. I'm not good enough.
So what are some of the others that you dealt with?
Oh my gosh.
If we can go that deeper.
This was, and this was,
Because this is what the listeners are likely dealing, and they're going to learn from you today.
It is. And so it was like, you know, there was things around. So I grew up very white adjacent. So my mother moved to Arizona when I was very young. And so I was 7 years old. You have to think, I'm a chocolate brown girl walking into a classroom full of all white children.
Yes.
And so what was my belief? This was just last week. I did not know this belief was here. I don't fit in. I don't fit in. I'm not perfect. I'm not white. I
And
will
you
never
at 7 years old
made that up
thought
to
this.
survive being the
Okay.
only black child in a classroom full of white children. I don't fit in here. And so you create, and they're in the background, and that's the thing. You don't know what you don't know. And so this work is designed to expose that, so that way you can heal from that.
So
and
it's this
then create a new
unconscious.
story.
There's this unconscious record that we have that
Right.
runs behind
That's right.
what our thoughts. So we have our thoughts over here,
Yes.
and then there's unconscious
Beliefs underneath
You
that.
know, like wheel that it believes are just kind of running you through your
That's
life.
right. That's right. That's right. And it's all rooted in your story that you created just to survive. It's just the way human machinery works. And everybody's human machinery works exactly the same. It doesn't matter who you are. Your human machinery always works the same. Your subconscious is going to run you thinking I had a mentor that used to say thinking is anti-intellectual. Do you know it took me 20 years to understand what that man meant? But it's because when you start thinking, your subconscious takes over. So if your
Right.
subconscious is full of beliefs that don't serve you, then that's what's going to be running your decisions.
Decisions.
So a
So
lot
you
of
have
times,
to learn how to let your intellect rule by giving it new information.
you got to unlearn.
Okay.
You know, you
Okay.
got to unlearn
Old
all
thinking.
those thought forms and patterns of belief that are really in the background running your show, because that's what's
Okay.
running it's the
Okay.
programming that's running you. And so if you think about a young black girl growing up in Arizona in the 80s, you know, and we live in Central Phoenix, and I go to Christian schools,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And so now, and my stepfather is white, and so what is the pattern of belief now about that? And I'm going to a Christian school where I'm learning that Jesus is white, so God is white, my
Right.
stepfather is white. So the background beliefs are,
That's the better option.
that's the better option. This is white is right. This is what it
Yeah.
needs to look like in my life. So when I got married, very young, white,
Yeah.
following right behind my mother. The things that my
Right.
mother did, I did. And
Right.
so when it was when I was going to have a daughter, when I turned 23 and I got pregnant, and I just knew I was going to have a daughter. I did not want my daughter doing the things that I was doing. And that was where the transformation really began. That's when I wanted the more, better, different, was when I knew I was going to have a girl. When I knew I was going to have a daughter, it was like, I want more for my daughter than
The
what
power.
I'm allowed
I think
for
it's
myself.
amazing how some things we won't do for ourselves, but
For our
by
children,
you, right?
for our children,
For our children,
we will.
And that's why I focused the womb process on women and single moms, because I knew the days that your why wasn't big enough, when it wasn't enough to get you out of that bed, it's what's in the way. It's not always the why. Sometimes it's what's in the way that I can't see that's really running my procrastination, that's running my bad relationship, that's running my choices. We meet people in our lives to heal from those parents. Or caregivers, positive and negative traits of those caregivers, but we meet people really to heal from those relationships.
Yeah. So this is pretty cool. And I love what you're saying. So here you are, you start discovering yourself. Now you start this yoga. And in the yoga program is when you start unlearning all of these emotional. And you said there were 5 steps. Can you take us through, you mentioned physical, nutritional, sexual, spiritual, and emotional.
Sure.
Can you take us through that so our listeners can take something valuable?
Because there's a piece of my life that goes to each one of those. So the physical, I knew that yoga would make the biggest difference in the physical transformation. I knew it in itself was a vehicle for transformation, but I knew through the physical body was the purging of the emotion that is stuck in the body from the trauma.
Yes.
And that's when, and then I did yoga for 12-step recovery, which was also created by Nikki Myers. And that was where I learned that process addiction and chemical addiction have the same brain.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're addicted to gambling or addicted to sex or addicted to food.
Yeah,
that
it's all the same.
process addiction has the same brain as somebody who's addicted to crack or addicted to alcohol. It's the same. And so, and I learned that all trauma was undergirded by, all addiction was undergirded by trauma. So then I knew, okay, we got to have a physical health lane. And then I got into EFT and tapping because I also did integrated hypnosis with a woman named Kathy Black. So there was another level of the work.
So, so just so people will know, EFT is emotionally focused therapy.
Or emotional freedom technique.
Oh, emotional
So it's
freedom.
tapping.
Okay,
Tapping.
so it's tapping.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So we do tapping together in a
But
session.
it's dealing with the emotions.
It is, and it is also another level of the emotional release from the body.
Yeah.
And then you get to tap in the affirmations. You can do, things like that. But I teach that technique because you need to be able to do it for yourself at home. Therapy is great. Transformation is where it's at. I love therapy as like a way to manage your transformation.
Right.
It's like always building the muscle for transformation. But I love going to those courses and in 3 days and an evening. It's like, bam, I'm dealing
Because
with
it shouldn't be forever.
It's
correct.
Yeah,
You should learn how to do it yourself.
And there should be some awareness about why I'm behaving this way.
Yeah.
Because once I get to the bottom of why I'm doing that, and even if I don't know why, just when I realize the impact on my life from I made up a story from this incident. I assigned this meaning. Now I can take complete responsibility for that.
Yeah.
And now I'm at the power of choice. See, you're not at choice when you're at default. When anger is your default emotion, you're not at choice.
Right.
It's just, that's your go-to. It's how you respond. So for me, like, confrontation was war. Because when I was 5, I was beating up my mom's boyfriends by the time I was 5 years old. Seriously. Like, I beat him upside the head with an iron until he fell out unconscious because he was beating my mother. And so that, for me, fueled that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't respond to anger because I would feel the adrenaline run down and I'm ready to go. And so Jim Zarvos was the first person that looked at me and said, Sherita, confrontation doesn't have to be war. No one had ever said that.
Yeah.
No one had ever even, I was like, oh, dang, you're right. I can just, and it just shifts. And now you're at the power of choice and you get some other kinds of tools to use. And that's what all of that integrated process is for.
Yeah. So you talk about the physical. Tell us about the nutritional. How nutritional plays out in this whole process of shifting and transforming.
That's one of the most important because nutritional, oh gosh. The nutritional came into my life. Like, I knew that nutrition was in there because I had dated a nutritionist.
Okay.
And he said, we would go to the movies and he'd be like, let's get a big water. And I was like, what about the popcorn? He was like, that does this and this and this and the salt and that's fake butter. And I was like, oh my God. And we would eat at these top-notch restaurants and he wrote a book on mindset. Wow. And so and he called it, the book was A Healthy Response Solution for Permanent Weight Loss. That's where I got Healthy Response Solutions. It's one of my companies.
So this is how you're keeping this physique so...
Functional medicine is how I kept this physique. And then I came back from Arizona. I had went there, long story short, I had come back from Arizona in like the early spring of 2018, and I met this fabulous functional medicine practitioner named Anis Santisi, and he changed my life. Because I was tired. I woke up tired. And I had an implant on birth control, so I was, you're on your cycle like 6 weeks, you go out for 2 and come back. And I was miserable, and I had to work hard. I had a cleaning service, so I was like physically labor working. And then I was working another part-time job, and I had my children, and my marriage was bad. So I was angry, resentful, frustrated. And this is after doing a lot of this work, right? And so then when I met Anesthetisi, and he gave me so much nutritional education, I got something called a functional health report, and I was like, this is it. Once I had that nutritional competency, I knew what foods were going to cause me inflammation. I knew what foods were causing damage to my gut. I learned the gut-brain connection. Yes. And once I understood the gut-brain connection, and I understood I was like, and once I healed my gut, it was on. Everything. My brain was firing, my neurotransmitters were back on, my hormones were balanced. So then it was just like, oh, okay, the brain fog was gone. I lost weight immediately in 3 weeks. It was not a long, drawn-out process.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, because your body knows what to do with real food. It's the preservatives and the things that are sprayed on the food that the body doesn't know what to do with. That's what settles in the tissues of your body, along with emotion and other things, and turns into disease.
So we spoke about physical, we spoke about nutritional, sexual. I want to know.
Sexual. This was awesome.
You
Sexual relational health came into my life in the last couple of years. It is my very dear friend, Devika Lyles. She is an amazing sexologist, and she changed my life. I used to go to her lunch and learn. She changed my sexual life and other parts. She's a coach, phenomenal coach. We met in Landmark Worldwide, and I do a lot of work with them. And she was my Team 2 coach when I was in one of their trainings that last for a year. And she brought into my life these distinctions about being responsible for your orgasm, that orgasm is a communication. She brought into my life free play and foreplay.
Okay.
You know, like when you just want a massage and you don't want it to lead to full-blown intercourse.
That's the free play. Okay.
And she taught me to be responsible for asking for what I wanted. That was my job. It wasn't like this person's job to like figure out what I like. It was my job to say, I like this, I don't like that. Right. She did a piece called the Cuddle Sutra, and it was all about sensei focus and touch, and it changed my life. I realized I had never cuddled. I had never, and I have a whole new relationship to touch. So I knew that sexual health was really huge because there's an act that we have about the way that we approach sex.
Okay.
And for women, for all people, really, it's huge because when I was in this training, I was like, what do you mean I have an inauthenticity about sex? And
I've been giving it my all. I have you to know.
And it took 2 weeks. And one day he said, I assert that you do. And there's an inauthenticity at play right now. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then it hit me. Porn, romance novels, movies, gossip as a kid, and childhood trauma. And you created yourself out of that. So that your sexual being. That's who you became. Yeah. And you were born into a conversation about sex.
You know, because people do sometimes they encourage porn, you know, to help with relationships. But, you know, I don't know that, you know, that it really does help. Or because it could easily, as you said, have you mimicking what they're doing and defining yourself.
And you never got an opportunity to create who you are as a sexual being.
Okay, we are short out of time, and I just want to make sure we get to two. You know, we have 3 minutes left. We got 3 minutes. This is another episode
so
we
the
can
last
create.
One was
we get spiritual
right?
and emotional. So just give us a little bit of spiritual.
So spiritual is meditation. Yeah. Meditation. I mean, it's just necessary. It is how you open your heart. It is how you activate the God within. It is how you take that moment and have that direct connect. You know, and so meditation is how you manifest. Meditation is how you really build the muscle for your authentic self. It is how you begin your day. It is just like y'all said in another recording about, you know, she used the word savers, and she had an acronym for that. And one of those things was meditation and being intentional about her day and the affirmations and the exercise. And it is that routine. And so this process gives a person a specified lifestyle that they get to be responsible for creating, that they get to discover inside of that process. And I get the privilege of doing this healing work with people and providing them access, but with people at an individual level, wherever they are, and at a community economic development level for various communities.
That's one more emotional.
So to me, all of those things make up our mental and emotional health. And
Right.
and I use EFT, emotional freedom technique, to deal with the emotional level of health. And, other things like, but they all integrate and work together.
This is amazing. And we got one more minute.
Yeah, so tell our viewers where they can find you.
Oh my gosh, you can find me on Instagram under Sherita Lacy. You can find me at SheritaLacy.com. You can find me at awombagency.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me around NAP because I'll be around the way and I do community work. I'll be chilling.
Well, thank you.
I would spell Sherita though, in case it's not on a prompter for people, but it's SHEREETALACY, and it is a brand all on itself.
It's really, really powerful. It's totally transformational because if you work with her, you get to talk about your physical, your nutritional, your sexual, your spiritual, your emotional, and you've got. Actually, in all of these, you've been mentored, and there's strategies for
Correct.
each of them. So when you go and work with Sherita, you're going to look at every aspect. Every aspect of who you are, from unconscious to conscious.
Yes.
So that is amazing.
So that
and
real
tools.
tools and
so
all
that you
those
don't
areas.
have one,
Yeah.
so that you don't have one area working against another area.
That's correct.
You
Because
know,
it's never
that's
in a
the
community about getting a
holistic-
job.
Right.
What is that
Yeah.
going to do for somebody?
Right.
Their baby daddy just got shot dead.
Yeah.
We have one more minute. If you, in this last minute, share with the audience, if they're going to take away something, what is it that you want them to take away with everything you shared?
You are perfect, whole, and complete. And you are one big possibility. And everything that you are going through are just circumstances. And you have the power to be who you really are so that you can do what it is that you want to do, so you can have the life that you want to have. And you sit in the driver's seat to be the creator of your own life, your own experiences. And it is up to you. You can do whatever you want.
Oh
Well,
my!
thank you.
Thank
And,
you. This is amazing.
So
you
be
really
sure
can have the
while
life
we
you
talk
want.
about connecting, be sure that you hit that like button. It's a thumbs up.
Yes.
And the share, and the subscribe, and then the all, so that you won't miss any of the notifications and miss our show, because it's getting better and better.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
Yes, it is. This is Dr. Luz Maria.
I'm Coach Lisa Frank, and this is
Sherita Lacy.
this has been another great episode of
Different Voices.
That was awesome.